In a stunning reversal today, the Attorney General of the United States announced that he will take control of the new federal prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein, a friend of Donald Trump's, an old friend of Donald Trump's, who has been charged with sex trafficking of young girls in federal court in New York City. After the dramatic surprise arrest of Jeffrey Epstein by the FBI when his private plane landed in New Jersey from Paris, and after Jeffrey Epstein was dragged into federal court in Manhattan on Monday, pleaded not guilty, and was ordered held without bail by a federal judge. After all of that, Attorney General William Barr was asked about the biggest new criminal case in the Justice Department yesterday, the Jeffrey Epstein case, and the Attorney General very clearly said this.
I'm recused from that matter because one of the law firms that represented Epstein long ago was a firm that I subsequently joined for a period of time.
That was yesterday. Today, the Attorney General said nothing about the Jeffrey Epstein case, but the Attorney General did order an unnamed Justice Department official to leak to selected news media that the Attorney General will not recuse himself from the new Jeffrey Epstein case. Bloomberg reported the news this way. Attorney General William Barr won't recuse himself from involvement in the new charges filed against alleged sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein by federal prosecutors in New York. According to a Justice Department official, Barr made the decision on Tuesday after consulting with career ethics officials at the department, said the official, who asked not to be identified discussing a sensitive matter. But Barr has recused himself from any retrospective review of the Justice Department's decision more than a decade ago, letting Epstein avoid prosecution on federal sex trafficking offenses in Florida. It is impossible for William Barr to recuse himself from a review of what happened in the sex trafficking case against Jeffrey Epstein in Florida, because that is a central part of Jeffrey Epstein's defense in the new case. One of Epstein's lawyers told the judge at his arraignment yesterday that the deal Jeffrey Epstein made with federal prosecutors in Florida means that Jeffrey Epstein cannot now be charged by federal prosecutors in New York. Attorney Reed Weingarten told the judge in Manhattan that the Florida deal will be a central part of Epstein's defense. He said that the Florida deal was, quote, a global resolution of the federal charges against Jeffrey Epstein. And so the Attorney General is not telling the truth. What is the Attorney General afraid of? Why didn't the Attorney General himself announce his new position on recusal today, since he publicly said yesterday that he was recused from the case? Why is the Attorney General afraid of explaining this publicly himself? Why is the Attorney General insisting that the Justice Department official who leaked the information not even be named in the news reports? Why did this new position on recusal have to be leaked and not delivered to all of the news media in a written press release? What is William Barr up to? What is he afraid of? That is the question tonight in the Jeffrey Epstein case. And as we reported at this hour last night, the Attorney General has an even stronger reason to recuse himself than the one he mentioned yesterday. Attorney General Barr's father hired Jeffrey Epstein to be a math teacher at the Dalton School on the Upper East Side of Manhattan when the Attorney General's father was the headmaster of that elite and very expensive private school. William Barr's father hired Jeffrey Epstein to teach high school boys and high school girls, even though Jeffrey Epstein is not even a college graduate. That is now, and was then, unthinkable in a school like Dalton. A year later, William Barr's father abruptly resigned from the Dalton School after the Board of Trustees decided to investigate the way William Barr's father was running that school. And not long after that, Jeffrey Epstein left the school and started his new life on Wall Street. Should the Attorney General of the United States be supervising a prosecution of a criminal defendant who was hired by and worked for the Attorney General's father? The Attorney General first recused himself yesterday, then unrecused himself today, and is not telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth about his multiple recusal decisions. As we so often say in the world of Donald Trump, we have never seen anything like this. No Attorney General of the United States has ever made a series of recusal decisions like this. Joining our discussion now, Mimi Rocha, former Assistant U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York, and Zerlina Maxwell, Senior Director of Progressive Programming at SiriusXM Radio. Both are MSNBC contributors. And Mimi, I was hoping we could have you here tonight because you're a veteran of the Southern District of New York, the district that brought this prosecution against Jeffrey Epstein, where suddenly the Attorney General has flipped in a day and decided he does want to be involved in it. What do you make of yesterday's statement by the Attorney General on recusal and today's leak that he's not recused from the new Epstein case?
I'm very wary. And you ask all the right questions and are highlighting all of the things about this that just send up, red flags. First of all, why, if Bill Barr says, I'm going to recuse because of my connection to Kirkland & Ellis, which was the law firm at which Jay Lefkowitz, who was one of Epstein's main attorneys back negotiating that sweetheart slap-on-the-wrist plea deal that Epstein got from Acosta back in Florida. So it's not just that, Barr was affiliated with a law firm. It's a law firm that was really at the center of this controversy.
But Barr says he wasn't at the law firm at the time of this case.
Okay, but, you join a law firm. I mean, was Lefkowitz there? Is he friends with Lefkowitz? Right. It's not just any law firm. It's not, I don't think that anyone who's worked at any law firm ever. But in this case, the relationship, the role of Jay Lefkowitz and that law firm with Acosta and that plea. I mean, there's a meeting between Acosta and Lefkowitz off-site during these plea negotiations that is so highly inappropriate, so much at the center of, where Lefkowitz basically gets an agreement from Acosta not to tell the victims about the plea. And he follows up with an email. I mean, that's how we know about it, where he says, thank you for your agreement, Mr. Acosta, U.S. Attorney, to not tell the victims about this plea deal. So Barr's connection to that law firm is problematic. I'm not sure it was mandatory recusal, but he said he was going to recuse because of that. To now draw this artificial line and say, well, I'm recused from that Florida part, as you point out, but not the part going forward, as a completely artificial line that all of a sudden is drawn the day after this, bombshell case comes out from the Southern District of New York that I'm sure is making Donald Trump, amongst others, very nervous, and his buddy Epstein for sure, because it's a strong case. And so it just looks so bad. And the bottom line is, when you have an Attorney General that you can't trust is defending justice and looking out for the Department of Justice, that's where this problem really comes to light. We cannot have faith in Bill Barr, and that's where his whole history so far is now just, coming to the fore.
So, Zerlina, Bill Barr's father,
yes,
his father, hired Jeffrey Epstein, who he knew was not a college graduate. Jeffrey Epstein took a couple of college courses in physics, and he hired him at one of the most expensive private schools in Manhattan to teach math, knowing he wasn't a college graduate. Bill Barr knows tonight that his father hired Jeffrey Epstein. He may have known it at the time that his father hired Jeffrey Epstein. He may have known Jeffrey Epstein at that time. We don't know.
We don't know.
But he's not recusing himself because of that.
Well, the thing that's so weird to me is not in isolation that he hired him without, the requisite experience. It's that, sexual predation of this type, it's not something that starts when you're 35 or 45, right? So if that's consistent and holds here, and obviously the prosecution yesterday made an eloquent presentation sort of explaining some of this, he probably had some of these behaviors that folks were aware of at the time. So the fact that you're hiring someone with no experience who has this type of predation towards teenage girls, at least that we know of, we don't know about the boys, but we at least know that he has the predation towards teenage girls and is trafficking girls, according to the paperwork filed yesterday. That's what bothers me. It's not hiring an experienced person. Maybe he just had great relationships. People get jobs all the time. It's the fact that he's a predator and you're placing him with potential victims, and nobody's stepping in to say, wait, hold up, this person, we need to do more research on this person and do a background check. And then you see this persist for decades. I think that, we've learned a lot in the Me Too era about enablers. We've learned a lot about the fact that people are not predatory in isolation, that there are people around that individual that are allowing it to continue, whether it be assistants to Jeffrey Epstein who are, or young women who are going out to recruit additional victims. There is a circle of people that all need to be held accountable, and not just Jeffrey Epstein. And I think Bill Barr's father is in that group, and I think Donald Trump and his associates are in that group. So I'm sure Donald Trump may be nervous today, but I'm sure the people who hang out with Donald Trump are also nervous today.
Mimi, we're going to squeeze in a break here quickly, but on Barr and his father, you're the Attorney General of the United States. Let's imagine a situation in which a defendant like this eventually decides he's going to tell everything. For whatever reason, may or may not develop, he's going to tell everything. And that story begins when he's a high school teacher at the high school where your father hired him. And you are now the unrecused Attorney General of the United States who's supervising that prosecution.
Well, I mean, if that develops factually, I mean, that would be an unwaivable, insurmountable conflict. I mean,
But recusal is about getting out before the conflict arises, right?
No, absolutely. And that is why, I mean, whether he needs to or not, because of the law firm, because of what his father did, he should get out. He said he was going to get out, and it is very suspicious to me that all of a sudden, the day after this bombshell case, oh, no, I'm not out from this. And it just looks bad, and part of recusal is about giving people faith in this justice system.
One more quick thing. It's entirely possible that William Barr discovered this prosecution the same time the rest of us did. It's entirely possible that the Southern District did not alert him, and so he wasn't in a position to stop it before the arrest and the arraignment.
Exactly, and that's why I'm saying it's suspicious that this is happening the day after, because he would not necessarily have known Acosta.
Okay, there's a lot more to talk about, including what Donald Trump said about Jeffrey Epstein today and Alex Acosta. We will do that right after this break. At the very same time when Jeffrey Epstein was trafficking in, having sex with, and raping young girls, according to federal prosecutors, new indictment of Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump called Jeffrey Epstein a terrific guy at that very same time. And Donald Trump said that he knew that Jeffrey Epstein pursued girls who were, in Donald Trump's phrase at the time, quote, on the younger side. At the very same time that Donald Trump was praising Jeffrey Epstein as a terrific guy and saying that he, quote, he's a lot of fun to be with, and that he pursues young girls on the younger side. At that very same time that Donald Trump said that, prosecutors now say Jeffrey Epstein was a criminal sex trafficker in young girls. And today, the president was asked about Jeffrey Epstein, and of course, what the president had to say was a lie.
I had a falling out with him a long time ago. I don't think I've spoken to him for 15 years. I wasn't a fan. I was not, a long time ago. I'd say maybe 15 years. I was not a fan of his. That I can tell you. I was not a fan of his.
He was a fan. He said Jeffrey Epstein was a terrific guy. He said Jeffrey Epstein was a lot of fun to be with. And Donald Trump knew. Donald Trump knew, as he said publicly at the time, that Jeffrey Epstein pursued girls, quote, on the younger side. Today, the president expressed sympathy not for the girls who Jeffrey Epstein is accused of sexually abusing, but for Alex Acosta, who was the federal prosecutor in Florida who made a very forgiving deal with Jeffrey Epstein over 10 years ago on similar charges, a deal that meant Jeffrey Epstein served no federal prison time. Alex Acosta is now Donald Trump's labor secretary.
I feel very badly, actually, for Secretary Acosta, because I've known him as being somebody that works so hard and has done such a good job. I feel very badly about that whole situation.
And back with us, Mimi Rocha and Zerlina Maxwell. Zerlina, he feels very badly for Alex Acosta.
Yeah, he always seems to side with the person either accused of rape or somebody who's covering up a crime, and that's backwards. We should have our empathy placed squarely with the victims in this case. We're very young, and all whom are recovering from the trauma they experienced as teenagers, because that's a lifelong recovery process. That's not something you get over overnight. But in addition, I think that there's a compound effect when it comes to Donald Trump. I am a firm believer that there is eventually going to be a reckoning for Donald Trump around all of these instances of sexual assault, sexual misconduct, and all of these examples where he's siding with people who are accused of those similar crimes. And the reason I say that is because while the people that support him don't care, the people that do not support him, we care a lot. We are angered every single time this happens. 1 in 4 women survive sexual assault in their lifetimes. And so now each time he does something like this, we're more activated to push back and resist against this administration to make sure we don't have a president who is credibly accused of multiple rapes, who was on television defending people who covered up child rape.
Mimi, Alex Acosta's handling of this case, it's going to be, Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer said it's going to be central to his defense. He's going to use it to try to, the first thing that's going to happen, apparently, on the defense side is a motion to dismiss on the basis of what he calls his global agreement with Alex Acosta.
Yeah, and I think that motion is going to fail. I understand why they're making the argument, but if you look, I mean, the Southern District preempted this in their detention letter. They were well aware this was coming. In their detention letter, they said, as a little aside, by the way, that Florida agreement, it doesn't bind us. It says specifically in the language, this is specific to the United States Attorney's Office in the Southern District of Florida. And by the way, there's case law in the Second Circuit that says unless an agreement, a plea agreement says that it binds all U.S. attorneys' offices, it only binds one. So they have the language of the agreement and the law on their side. They knew this was coming. This is not like some rookie thing here. I mean, they expected this to be coming, and they are going to lose that argument. But of course, they're going to make it. I mean, this is their job. They're defense attorneys. But it's going to simply highlight, frankly, how abominable, how horrible, how pathetic that original plea was. And I do not see how Alex Acosta stays in this job. He's not just any cabinet member. He is in the Department of Labor. That oversees human trafficking, sex trafficking, human trafficking. He should not be in this position. He let a sex trafficker go. And if you read Judge Mara's opinion in Florida, where he found that the prosecutors violated the Victims' Rights Act in not notifying the victims, these emails between the prosecutors and the defense attorneys, it was a calculated decision to keep it from the victims. I cannot tell you, as a former prosecutor, how shocking that is to me, and why that press conference yesterday with the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York and the Director of the FBI was, frankly, such an emotional punch in favor of justice, where they said these victims deserve their day in court, and we are giving it to them. And it was a rebuke to what Acosta did. We're going to have to leave it there for tonight. Mimi Rocah and Zerlina Maxwell, thank you both for joining us. Really appreciate it. And when we come